Sorry. Just trying to find a place. They're trying to find a place for seats. We've filled this place. Before I begin, Jim Hansen needs no introduction, but I'm going to give you one. I'll give him one. First, I want to thank Father Hendrickson, the president of Creighton University, for, on short notice, agreeing at a terrible, absolutely horrible time of year for us as we're trying to close out things. We've now opened things up, as you can see, for agreeing to support this lecture. I want to thank Dean Bridget Keegan and Associate Dean Tracy Lavelle of the College of Arts and Sciences for their work to make this event possible. I especially want to thank Pam Yinko and the College of Arts and Sciences for organizing this event during an impossibly busy time of year. And I also want to thank Cindy Workman and the Director of Public Relations for her work publicizing the lecture. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you who have publicized this and come out to hear this lecture. Some of you, from what I've heard, maybe even further than this, but some have come 5 hours for this lecture. This includes several chapters of Citizen Climate Lobby. If you don't know about Citizen Climate Lobby, you should. You can Google it. They're doing very important work. It also includes Bold, Nebraska. Bold, yes, we can pass the Bold, Nebraska. Bold, Nebraska has 30,000 members, and its tireless director, Jane Clubb. Jane, where's Jane? There's Jane. As you all well know, their tireless efforts over many, many years led to the lack of keeping the Keystone XL pipeline from being constructed across the Ogallala Aquifer. Before introducing Dr. Hansen, I'd also like to alert you of one other thing I forgot. Tomorrow is the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting. And Bold, Nebraska is hosting a rally at noon, right? Noon in front of the main entrance of the CenturyLink Center near the statues. Okay, so put on your raincoats, some gloves probably, and come support the great work of Bold, Nebraska. I'd also like to, for all of you being educated in climate, there's a lecture sponsored by the Holland Lecture Series on May 11th at the Holland Center, so Wednesday, May 11th. The lecture is by Naomi Orestes, the science historian, and she'll be sharing with us her important work on the climate, my phrase, the climate denial machine in the United States. She's really she wrote a great book, and she's really worth listening to. So that's Wednesday, May 11th. Now let me give a somewhat lengthy introduction to Dr. Hansen. Dr. James Hansen was the director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies from 1981 to 2013. In 2013, Dr. Hansen stepped down from his position at NASA so that he could testify against the government on behalf of young people in the Our Children's Trust lawsuit. I recommend you also looking that up, Our Children's Trust lawsuit. The lawsuit is a group of teenagers suing the federal government for not protecting them from the coming climate catastrophe. A month ago, I think it was, the federal government, along with all the major fossil fuel industries, filed a motion to dismiss the case in the federal court of Oregon. And David won that motion. The young people won. Dr. Hansen testified on behalf of the young people, and so the motion was dismissed. This is a very big deal. Before I get to Dr. Hansen's great scientific achievements, I'd like to say a word about his advocacy. The truth about climate change has compelled Dr. Hansen to tirelessly draw attention to the implications of the science. He not only stands out among his peers in terms of scientific work, but his moral obligation, his sense of moral obligation. He has been arrested multiple times for acts of civil disobedience to draw attention to the problem. He once camped out within a month of major surgery with Harvard students, camped out, right, in the 70s, with Harvard students to protest the use of coal from the local coal-fired power plant. Dr. Hansen has not only taught us about climate science, but he has witnessed to the truth that knowledge confers upon us responsibility, and that in an age of systemic evil, there is no neutrality, and silence indicates consent. Something for us to think about as he teaches us this evening, and something we hope the Oracle of Omaha will think about as he teaches him tomorrow. Now back to the science. Currently, Dr. Hansen is an adjunct professor at Columbia University's Earth Institute, where he directs a program in climate science awareness and solutions. He is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences and has received numerous awards, including the Sophie and Blue Planet Prizes. He is widely recognized among his peers as a groundbreaking scientist who will take his place as one of the great scientists in the history of climate science. Spencer Work, the historian of climate science from the American Institute of Physics, describes Dr. Hansen's work in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s as absolutely groundbreaking. The distinguished climate scientist Michael Oppenheimer, who holds a chair at Princeton University, has remarked that about half of the papers in his file drawer, labeled canonical papers, are papers by Jim Hansen. Dr. Hansen has a long history of being ahead of the curve in climate science, as his fellow distinguished climate scientist Raymond Pierre Humbert has maintained. Jim, quote, Jim has a real track record of being right before you can actually prove he's right with statistics. An example of this, in 1981, Dr. Hansen published a paper in the journal Science that forecasted that global warming could be detected as early as the end of the 1980s. So this is back in 1981. And potential effects on climate in the 20th century would include drought in regions of North America and Central Asia, and the erosion of the West Antarctica ice sheet, a worldwide rise in sea level, and the opening of the Northwest Passage from the disintegration of Arctic sea ice. All of these forecasts from 1981 have come true. Last month, Dr. Hansen published a paper which he describes as the most important paper of his career. Before handing the microphone over to Dr. Hansen, I will leave you with the words of the eminent climate scientist, Dr. Michael Mann. Quote, I think we ignore James Hansen at our own peril, end quote. Let us welcome Dr. Jim Hansen.